my distinguished ministerial colleague, Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Lieutenant Governor Jammu and Kashmir Manoj Sinha ji, Minister of State for Science and Technology, Earth Sciences PMO Dr. Jitendra Singh ji, President ICCR Dr. Vinay Sahasrabudhe ji, Commissioner Shri Dalu ji, Vice Chancellor Professor Ganai ji, Excellencies, distinguished academics, senior people from the university, from the state, dear friends. First of all, a very, very warm welcome here, because as I am the guest, but this is also the building which is part of my ministry, so I'm also partly the host. So I'm really very, very pleased to see you. I must follow Dharmendra Pradhan ji really in complimenting Coast Kashmir for this initiative. Because in the 4 years that I have been Minister of External Affairs, and the 3 years before that when I was Foreign Secretary, I've never had any university of any kind approach us saying, what do we do to get more foreign students here? So I not only appreciate this initiative, but I actually, like Dharmendra Pradhan ji said, I think this is an example for other universities. I hope others will follow suit. And if they do, I want to also assure them today that we will be as responsive as we are to all of you. Now, you all know that 4 years ago, a very big process of change started in Jammu and Kashmir. And that process of change was intended to ensure that the full benefits of development and progress that the rest of India had seen for many, many years were also now completely available to the people, especially to the youth of Jammu and Kashmir. And that in that sense, their being in the national mainstream was extremely important. But it wasn't just that. It was also by doing so, they would connect up with what the rest of India was connecting up, which was also to be part of the international mainstream. That what we saw with many other states and many other universities in other states, which was more international students being there and more of our students going out, it is something that we obviously would like to see in Jammu and Kashmir as well. And for me, this is not just an education event. It is not just an event of what do we do in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It is for me a very integral part of ensuring that a very important region of India is connected and I say this as a foreign minister, is connected to what is happening in the world. So this occasion is something which is, for me, of exceptional importance. Now, you all know why education is important. Education is important because perhaps more than any other way, it is the path of mobility, it is the path of progress. You know, there are many of us, and I count myself, people who through education actually have come up in life. Now, education is not just a quest for knowledge. It is also a way, a pathway of awareness. And again, in a globalized world, it is absolutely essential that the young people of India are fully aware of what is happening in the world. And there is no better way of knowing what is happening in the world than to have international students among you. It's obviously many years since I was a student. But I can tell you, I still remember at that time, there were very few international students in the universities those days. But I can still remember every one of the international students who studied with me. And somewhere, you know, they connected us up. You know, I'm now talking of the period when I was in JNU. There was a student in my time from Japan. Many, many years later, I went to Japan. And there were things that student had, you know, left in my memory in the interactions we had. And suddenly a lot of what he said came back to me. It came back to me as a way of connecting up with a place where I had just gone in with very little prior knowledge. So I see the purpose of getting more international students in our educational institutions as something hugely important, and I want to say again in this forum with the Education Minister present that we see this as a partnership between the Education Ministry and the Ministry of External Affairs, and it's our shared responsibility to ensure that this aspect of the new education policy succeeds fully. Now, where are we today? I would say, roughly speaking, for the last few years, we've had about, give or take, 25,000 international students in India. That's a very small number. It's a small number that does not do justice to our institutions, and it doesn't do justice to the world. We have today the ability to scale this up. We actually have an obligation to scale it up. And I say this because when I look at what we are doing with the world in other fields, India today has projects done or under delivery in 78 countries of the world. In 78 countries of the world, just think it's almost more than maybe 40% of the countries of the world. So if our relationships are so extensive, if our investments are so deep, if our networking is so good, we need to see that translated into a greater flow of international students to India. And that is why I'm particularly pleased today to see representatives of the diplomatic corps here today. And I would like to tell them that, part of our relationship building is also how do we grow the number of students, because students at the end of the day are the best investments that anybody can make. They, the difference that they can make. We have seen students, there are today people, I just came from Fiji, The Prime Minister of Fiji had, as a military officer, spent time in a course here. The President of Nigeria had done so. There are many places where I have seen people who have availed of our technical courses, of our professional courses, who have come here for some kind of training. But I believe that rather than, catch them, I would say, later on in their career, it is much better for us that this relationship building start very much earlier. And I would certainly hope that we can find ways by which this outlook of ours, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it is also expressed in the field of education. Now, a few words about agricultural science and technology, and I am not in any way connected to that domain. But I do know one thing, that if I were to look at the few, maybe 3-4 big problems of the world, problems not just of a year but problems of a decade, maybe of a generation, and problems that affect the entire planet. Clearly, challenges of food security are right up there in terms of problems. And last year, because of what happened due to the conflict in Ukraine, this was brought home to a very large number of countries. Now, there are, there was a diplomatic initiative, many of you would have heard at that time, to get grain out of Ukrainian ports. But that was not the problem in itself. It was actually one aspect of a much bigger problem, and the much bigger problem is that if you look at what is actually required for decent nutrition in the world, global food production is well short of that, and we have to think of this very differently, very imaginatively, and that is why I would say, Prime Minister's initiative that we celebrate, we mark, we implement 2023 as the International Year of Millets. Believe me, I regard this actually as an extremely profound and consequential initiative, because it addresses a very big demand gap in a very practical way, that you are looking actually at a grain with which the entire world has a history, which has enormous nutritional value, which has a very low water consumption, which is produced by small farmers, which therefore is an entirely ignored area. I mean, in this country today, for every kilogram of wheat we produce, 5 kilograms of wheat we produce less than 1 kilogram of millet. Surely we ourselves have scope to grow. But the Prime Minister is not just thinking about our country. He actually has a global perspective. And among the many messages which are going to come out of the G20, one of them is that please look at millets as a sustainable, expandable additionality to global food grain production and therefore for global food security. And we can only do this at a global level if we are actually connected globally. And nobody will connect us more globally than graduates of an agricultural educational system who through their networking will take idea from here and take it somewhere else. Because the reality is a very large part of the world has a history of growing millets. It is just that with the coming of wheat, many of us, them and us, we have actually lowered our production target here. The second, of course, is food processing. Again, food processing is an area where India itself is making rapid strides. We are also making strides as a exporter of food grains, of horticultural products, of agricultural products. So when we talk about the world being a family, when we talk about getting along, a global community, finally, to me, it's the practical side of it which matters. Today's function for me has two facets to that practicality. One facet is the educational vehicle which will build international cooperation. And the other facet is the agricultural science and technology, because it addresses a very, very important global need in a very, very effective way. So this brings both of them together. And it not only brings both of them together, it brings both of them together in a way in which it highlights a capability of an institution in Jammu and Kashmir. So I end once again by really today expressing my very deep appreciation that we have the opportunity of hosting you in this function at your initiative, and I hope to see many, many more of them in the coming days. Thank you very much.